border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
Throws deep downfield for the end zone, a lunging catch, and it's a score for the Herd, Jerron Woodyard. And it is 37-0, and Grant Wells is moving up toward a 300-yard passing performance in the first half. That is his 4th touchdown toss.
Story toward Jackson, got separation to the 20, to the 10, and he will go. Lucky Jackson from 54 yards out.
Pressure off the edge. Screen delivers. What a catch, Levias, who brings it in. Armani Levias to the house. Touchdown, Marshall.
This will be from 52 yards. From the far hash mark. John Haggerty, the punter, will hold. Jared Nash will snap it. It's definitely long enough. It is good! Unbelievable. The true freshman, Corey Munson, hammers it home from 52 yards.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. It's been a little while since Trace and I have been able to get together here and put out an episode, but there has been there's more than a fair amount of kind of sort of earth-shattering news on a number of fronts as far as Marshall goes, Trace. So looks like we've got a little bit of stuff to talk about, and it's not really sport specific. It's athletic department specific. It doesn't really get any bigger than the news that's broken over the past couple of days around surrounding Marshall athletics. And of course, we're going to have to go all the way back to a couple of weeks ago, which, gosh, in today's age seems like a couple of years ago. But hey, there's a national champion in Huntington, and we're going to talk about that too. It still seems kind of wild that happened, and that there's a national champion program in Huntington, West Virginia. But we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about some recent football news. And of course, we're going to touch base on the news that broke about Mike Hamrick. So Trace, pretty insane couple of weeks, a lot of highs and a lot of lows. So let's talk about, where would you like to start? You just get to run the gamut today of all kinds of good news. So what feels like the most natural thing to start talking about for you?
Oh, probably the soccer team, just since it was the first in the line of events that we're going to be talking about here.
Chronologically speaking, let's talk about that unbelievable run in the College Cup by Marshall men's soccer, who eventually became national champions. Are you kidding me? Yeah. That is really, really, really cool. They've got something brewing there that's really special in Huntington, and I really think as long as they can keep a hold of head coach Chris Grassi, they have the ability to keep it special. So talk about it, man. I'm not much of a soccer fan, but I got to tell you, I was captivated by this run. It was pretty exciting, and the way it ended, and 3 game-winning kicks in 3 games from Jamil Roberts really set himself as that stretch will turn you into a legend right there. If you didn't do anything else in your entire career, which we know he did, that makes you a legend. So you'll be known for years and years and years in Huntington circles revolving around soccer. So give it to me. What about this unbelievable soccer run?
Yeah, and I agree with what you said. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm not a big soccer fan. Like, it's not that I've never really watched it. It's just that I don't watch it nearly as much as other sports. I mean, it's just not really it's never really been my thing for the most part. But I mean, if it's a Marshall sport that's having a lot of success, I'm going to keep up with it. I mean,
right.
It's beyond just the sport. It's about Marshall. Like, you're a Marshall fan. And, I have been keeping up with the soccer team, especially over the last few years, because they've been on such a good trajectory. I mean, when he got there, they were, a sub 500 team. And then 2019, they exploded. And then 2020, of course, they exploded. I mean, it's surreal. And I guess the thing is, like, you have to really take all this in, because this might be the only, well, hopefully not, but this might be the only time we get to see this as Marshall fans, like a major Division I national title for Marshall University. It just doesn't happen. I mean, the last national title of anything that they had won was 1AA football. I mean, it's been 25 years or whatever. So like this is rarefied air, to put it mildly. It just doesn't come around like this. And that was the first ever college soccer game I had watched from start to finish, and it was extremely captivating. I mean, I'm not going to pretend, like I'm a big soccer buff, but like that game was extremely exciting. It's very aggressively played. Both teams really wanted it. Marshall controlled basically the whole game from what I could gather. I mean, they really were in control, had the ball a lot, possessed it a lot. And then, like you said, Jamil Roberts, I mean, that's, in recent memory, I think probably the most significant or legendary, like, series of events for a Marshall player was probably John Elmore in that 2018 conference title game. Going off like he did, leading Marshall back to the big dance and everything. That was probably like an iconic kind of Marshall sports moment. Well, this is probably top that. I mean, the fact that he got the game-winning goal in this one, and then they, had the 2 game-winning goals before that in the previous 2 matches. I mean, just crazy stuff. And it's, when you see all the shirts and all the memorabilia and stuff that you can get now for that, it's still kind of surreal just to think that they, because the system in place doesn't even allow hardly, the little guys to really get a chance anymore. Like, especially in college football, it's non-existent. So to see a team like Marshall, and then on the women's side, Santa Clara, to see a team like Marshall or Santa Clara win a Division I national title in soccer is insane. I mean, it's huge. And, Chris Grassi deserved every penny of that extension he got. He deserves more than that. I mean, he brought a national title to Huntington, but he's now going to be, top 5 to whatever in the country base salary for men's soccer. So, and coaches. So they're extremely invested in him, and they should be. I mean, what more could you ask for out of a guy? You're not going to see that. I mean, you might not ever see that again. I mean, it's just so crazy to think. And it's not like, they just won a rifling national title. Like, they won like a legit sport. No offense, but like, I mean, they won an actual sport. So a national title. So it's just kind of crazy. It's even 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, it still kind of feels surreal. And like, you have to, I don't know how many times I've watched that final goal, but I know all Herd fans are probably in the same boat as me on that. But just totally awesome stuff, and just need to relish it because it's special stuff.
Well, when you think about soccer, it might not be as popular in the region,
right,
as well, let's say the world, because it is the most popular sport in the world.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna, you talk about it in terms of football and basketball, they say it's something for a team to recruit nationally. Instead of just regionally or whatever, like, we recruit nationally. That's what, well, Chris Grassi has the ability really to recruit globally now. I mean, this is the most popular sport in the world, and you are at the top of the hill in collegiate athletics at that sport.
Yeah.
And, Huntington offers some things that kids from around the world would maybe just fall in love with. I mean, it's a small town feel, but it's got a little bit of city living in it. But, it's just the fans, the relationship with the city and the students and the fans with Marshall is, it's kind of special. So I could see how that would be a nice draw. Oh, and not to mention, you have great facilities there. Yes. You have great coaching staff there. You have a great equipment staff that keeps you looking sharp. I mean, what more could you really? Oh, yeah, and you win a lot of games. So what else could you really want? I think it's great. I think it's really great that Marshall didn't wait and see and try to do something else on the cheap. They saw that they have Chris Grassi as one of the finest coaches in men's Division I soccer, actually maybe just soccer in general.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know what? Nope, we're going to lock him up. And they backed up the Brinks truck and they paid the man. I mean, he brought a national title to Huntington, West Virginia. You may never say that again.
A star over the logo.
Yeah, you may never say that again.
Yeah.
Pay the man. I mean, if you're going to talk about, no offense to Dan D'Antoni, no offense to Charles Huff. I know it's the markets that they're in, the sports that they play that dictate the salaries they make, but they're making a lot more than Chris Grassi is, and he just brought home a title, like not a conference title, a national title. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to the men's soccer team on a unbelievably historic and entertaining run. Let's take a second and relive that path through the College Cup. Right?
Gauntlet.
They have to beat Charlotte just to kind of win the conference or something like that. I think it was Charlotte.
Yeah, it was Charlotte.
And then you get into the tournament and you end up winning against the number one. Yes, but I mean, like the number one team in the country.
Yeah.
Then you beat the reigning national champion.
Yep.
Then you beat the team that was the host team of the entire tournament.
Yeah.
Who seemingly could have had the entire population of the area behind them if they had just shown up, which is something else we'll talk about here in a second. And then you beat Indiana in a national championship match, who is widely known as having the most prestigious men's soccer program in America, 8-time national champions.
Yes.
Right. So it's not like you just got lucky and knocked off one good team and some other teams knocked off these powerhouses.
No,
you knocked off all these powerhouses, like one by one, dink, 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 and down they go. And here comes, the Herd just thundering through another match.
Fordham was undefeated. They had only been tied a couple of times. They had never lost this year.
Yeah, this makes this run just even more special, even more historic, even more impressive.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? How can you deny the sheer greatness of that run? You can't. I don't care how fan-sided you are. When you go, dang, man, this team went through all that. Well, they got a call here and there. No. That goes both ways. We all know, watching enough sports, every team gets a call from here and there. But at the end of the day, this team knocked off 5-6 straight top teams in the country to get a national title. And it's pretty darn impressive. Now, let's talk about how Marshall traveled to Cary, North Carolina and turn that place green. I mean, the coaches talked about it. The social media was talking about it. Like the media that was covering the tournament was talking about how it was, 70-30 Marshall fans versus whoever was there, particularly when they were playing North Carolina. You're thinking, this should be all, powder Carolina blue and white. And here it is. It's barely that. It's a spattering of that. It's 60-40 Herd. It's 70-30 Herd. So congratulations are definitely in order to the fan base at Marshall. They showed out when they needed to. Yeah. They got behind this team really when they needed to. And now games at Hoops Family Field are going to be must see. It's going to be must see. So that in and of itself is great too. Now, not only is the local Huntington economy going to have to necessarily rely on Marshall Saturday game days and, basketball games, but hey, you can throw in a soccer match now. Mm-hmm. You can see some more, the restaurants might see an uptick in business. The bars might get a little bit more busier pregame. This is big. This is huge for a smaller city like Huntington. So you just can't talk enough about it. Congratulations to those guys. It's really, really awesome. I really didn't think in my lifetime I would see national champion anything. Mm-hmm. And it's just really cool that it is. The last thing I want to say about that is you talked about how cool is it to see teams like Marshall, teams like Santa Clara have a chance at this title. Well, you know what? That's what happens when you open the field and give good teams an opportunity to play. And we will bang that drum until the drum breaks when we talk about football, because we all know by now that they use these terms and they implement these systems to hoard power and hoard money and hoard opportunity. And it's to keep good teams like, like the Coastal Carolinas of last year came out of nowhere and were really, 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 really good. Yeah, who knows how well they would have done if we'd have had a 32-team tournament, a 32-team playoff or something like that, but that's what you got to do. You got to let everybody be on the same level. And if you're good enough to make the field, you need to get an opportunity to play. I mean, expand the field. I don't want to see Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and freaking Oklahoma every year. I just don't want to do it.
It's boring.
I don't care. Not sorry about that.
No.
So let's transition into a little bit of football, Trace. It's time to take this high note and curb it a little bit. We've got some serious football news that may be worrisome to some Herd fans. And maybe not to some others. We got a myriad of fairly high-profile transfers that are leaving the program, Trace, and it's not ideal, shall we say. I don't think anybody really saw All-American offensive lineman Kane Madden transferring out, but that's the case. We don't really know what happened there. I don't know, if it's just a case of him wanting to play for a bigger program, maybe a shot at a title, whatever the case may be. But I really thought he was going to be an anchor on that offensive line this year. It was going to be, he was going to play a huge role, and now he's in the portal. Also in the portal, transferring out a couple of wide receivers, Artie Henry and Brock Thompson. Those two guys have already found their next home. Artie Henry will be playing at UVA and Brock Thompson at Purdue. So, thoughts on these three particular guys, Trace, and, what it may mean for the Herd moving forward.
Well, there are significant losses. There's no doubt about that. Kane Madden, best offensive lineman and maybe the best offensive lineman in the group of five. To be honest, he's one of the best. But, I see a lot of people say, like, oh, well, this isn't a good look for the new coaching staff or whatever. But, okay, how many more times than not when a new coach comes in, players are going to transfer. That's just how it is. And I don't think that's anything against Huff or any of the staff. He would have been. He's already graduated. It was just, he's already fulfilled everything he needed to fulfill for Marshall. Now, I'm not saying I didn't want him again for another year. Of course I did. But, it's not like he's just up and leaving and just, ditching them and, saying, screw you all. That's not how it is. He's trying to better his position. He's going to Notre Dame. He's going to be on NBC every week. He's gonna have a chance to make a name for himself and maybe become a first-round draft pick. Let's be honest, it wouldn't have happened at Marshall. Would he have been drafted? Absolutely, but he would not have nearly as many eyeballs on him as he would at Notre Dame. That's just the point-blank fact. He would have been drafted. Josh Ball was like 4th round for Dallas this last year. He would have probably been around there. But now, if he really shows out at Notre Dame, he could be a first-round pick easy. So, it's really going to help his case out. And, yeah, it sucks from Marshall's perspective because, he was their best lineman. But they still have a lot of great linemen. I'm not worried about the line at all. They are losing him and Josh Ball, but I'm not worried about it. I am, but I'm not. I'm not worried about the line just falling apart. I don't think that's going to happen. And as far as the receivers go, Artie Henry, he's had a kind of up and down career as far as injuries go. He's battled injuries a lot. We never quite got to see what he could actually do. He showed flashes that he could be a really good player, but unfortunately he got hurt a lot and missed a lot of games. So we know Virginia's getting a good one there. Effie's healthy for sure. And Brock Thompson, he had a really strong start to last year before he got hurt and, just never quite worked out after that. But, Purdue's got a good one there. Brad Lambert's had to have had some influence there because he was at Marshall already. But, I don't know. The receivers, I'm honestly not sure how the receiving unit's going to look this year. I know they still have some good players. I'm sure, got some guys that are going to make the name for themselves that we didn't know before. But offensive line, I think it's fine. Receivers, I'm a little more questionable about just because I don't know the personnel yet. But, yeah, there are definitely significant losses, especially Kane Madden. But they're not insurmountable losses just based on, the unit that they already have in place.
Well, let's take a look at the offensive line. You still got Will Ulmer coming back. You still got Alex Millette coming back. You still got Seguero coming back. You've got Billy Ross transferring in from a high-profile recruit out of high school from Huntington High that went to North Carolina.
Big-time guy.
And now he's back in town. So anytime you lose a guy with the moniker All-American, it's going to suck. Yeah. But it's not like he was a one-man offensive line. No. I can't take anything away from Kane Madden because we have been talking nothing but great things about him since he plugged in way back when Millette got hurt in the 2018 Moonshine Throwdown. Late in the game, Millette went down, and Madden started getting game, and he just started getting better and better and better and better and better and better and better. And now you see that culminate in an All-American accolade at the end of last season. Yeah. The guy's just good. So, Brian Kelly reaps the rewards of his hard work, of Madden's hard work in the weight room, in the film room, on the field. So I got nothing bad to say. The guy just wants to play ball. And if you want to play ball after college and you're a All-American from Marshall, well, you're right. Going to Notre Dame, where you are a marquee must-see game every week for many thousands of people, scouts and decision makers at NFL teams, it's just a smart move. Yep. Now, whether that's set in stone or not, I still don't know if he's fully going to go to Notre Dame. I keep seeing some things about Florida State as well, but either way, those are two high profile teams that are going to get eyeballs on them from, these NFL type decision makers. And whether you like it as a Herd fan or not, it sucks that he's not going to be blocking for Grant Wells and Knowledge McDaniel, Sheldon Evans, and those guys. But, at the end, you're right. He fulfilled his obligation to Marshall. He came there as a walk-on. Yeah. So you got to love that story anyway. He comes as a walk-on and turns into one of the best offensive linemen of the last 20 years. And all he wants to do is continue playing after his days at Marshall. Man, say thank you, and you appreciate it, and you wish him well, and, good luck to you. Because he owes you nothing, and he did everything that was asked of him. So go get paid, son. That's all I can tell you. Go get paid. Artie Henry and Brock Thompson, that kind of stings a little bit because that's some experience out of the wide receiver core. And you toss in the fact that there's a new wide receiver coach. Dallas Baker's gone. He's up at Buffalo now. And, it is what it is. It's going to be a new look. But, hey, Corey Gamage is still in town, and we really think that this is the year that Corey Gamage not can break out, must break out. He must break out. And there are some other weapons that are there in Huntington as well. I thought for sure that Brock Thompson was going to be a big part of Grant Wells' success this year. It was a different look after he got hurt. But look, Talik Keaton is still there.
Yep.
Dude, Willie Johnson is still there.
That's insane. Willie Johnson's been there longer. He's been there since Pennington.
So, and you remember when we had Tom Bragg on talking about spring ball, he mentioned wide receiver Shadid Ahmed had a good game in the spring game. So there's some good guys still there. EJ Horton's coming in as a freshman, coming out of JUCO ranks, coming in highly touted. And you know what? Recruiting never ends. So who knows if there's another splash out there. We've seen, and this is pure speculation, Trace, pure speculation. In the last week, we've seen two Alabama running backs hit the portal. Who was running backs coach last year at Alabama? That's right. Marshall head coach Charles Huff. Now, we're not saying that that's, either of those guys are going to end up in Huntington, but when your position coach is now a head coach, well, who's one of the first calls you probably look at? The guy you have familiarity with, right? Because anytime there's a coaching change, you're probably going to see transfers. And to all those folks banging that drum that, well, this is happening too much at Marshall, guys, it's happening all over the country. Yeah. Okay, everybody got a year of eligibility with Corona. The NCAA transfer rule now, where you can transfer one time and play immediately, it changed the game. All right, the transfer portal is now the Wild West of college football.
Yeah.
It is. And if you think teams aren't calling your players that are any good and saying, hey, you want to come transfer? It's happening. All right. It's happening. It's
for a year.
And until the NCAA wants to and figures out how to curb what they call in NFL circles as tampering, then that's going to happen. So you might as well get used to it. But fortunately, it's a two-way street. So, herd coaches, Western coaches could be doing the same daggone thing to these good players that are buried in the depth chart, because of whatever's good for the goose is good for the gander. A couple of guys that have transferred in to Marshall the past couple of past week or so, 2 weeks. Just the other day, I hope I get his name right. Stephen Fauchot, I think is his name. He's coming from Purdue. He was listed as a defensive lineman at Purdue, but he's going to be playing offensive line for Marshall. So there's your other offensive lineman. You lose Madden. You lose Josh Ball to the draft. You got Billy Ross coming in, and you got Fauchot right now from Purdue coming in, looking to mix it up on the offensive line. So 2 in, 2 out. I'm sure there's some other things that are going to be going on. I don't know too much about this guy because I don't watch too much Purdue football. Yeah. But, hey, the coaches like him, so that must mean he can offer something to help the herd. And lastly, Just in recent, there have been other transfers in, but just recently, the day before that Kane Madden announced he was transferring out, a player by the name of Shane Simmons announced that he was transferring in to Marshall from Penn State. He's a defensive lineman, 6'4", 221 pounder. So there's a lot of connections there with Huff and Penn State. That's where he was before Alabama. And of course, I'm sure Marshall fans would be over the moon if one of those Alabama backs decide to make the trip to Huntington. But look, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, Trace. This is the biggest story. Well, I hate to say the biggest story since the national championship because that's only 2 weeks, but relatively speaking, this is a pretty big story surrounding Marshall athletics. Just yesterday, day before yesterday, it was announced that Mike Hamrick will step down as athletics director at Marshall at the end of the month when his contract expires and move into a special assistant / advisory. What kind of role is it? I don't know. In the office of the university president. Nobody knows really what that means, but it does mean one thing. He's not going to be athletic director July 1st. In the article I read, it said that Jeff O'Malley will take over on an interim basis. Jeff's been around there for a long time. He's a really good guy. I've actually met Jeff on a number of occasions. So the herd will be in very, 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 very capable hands with Jeff O'Malley at the helm. What do you think, Trace? Did you see this coming? Did you think it was going to happen, or would the smoke blow over and people chill out and Hamrick would get a couple of more years? What do you think? What's your reaction here to this news surrounding Mike Hamrick?
Honestly, I kind of saw it coming and didn't see it coming at the same time. Like, it's one of those weird situations. And it seemed like within recent months that the writing was kind of on the wall. Like, things were kind of trending in the direction of Hamrick not being retained. I mean, the whole thing with him not wanting Charles Huff allegedly and, wanting Brad Lambert to be the head coach, and then Gilbert and the board of governors overriding him and bringing Huff anyways. That story just kind of raised some red flags, obviously. I mean, at that point, if you're not on the same page especially when it comes to hiring the head football coach, your biggest program athletically.
Yes.
If you're not on, if you're at that big of a difference with the president of the university and the board of governors, there's no coming back from that, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not saying that's the only reason that he's not being brought back as AD again, but I'm saying that was probably the nail in the coffin, so to speak. I mean, the relationship just the trust wasn't there anymore, I don't figure, with both sides. I mean, but personally speaking, and I tweeted this, I would have given Hamrick at least 2 more years. I think he's earned that. I mean, I'm not saying extend him for 5 or 7 years or whatever, but I'm saying at least give him a couple more years. I would have liked to have seen that. I mean, through all the things that people say about him, whether, that he held on to Doc too long, that he doesn't do a good enough job with building, with reaching out to the fan base, with, he says sometimes stuff that makes the fans upset, and he's, endorsed all that stuff in 2016 where he, basically just, for lack of a better term, crapped all over the fan base, and then stuff like that. But for all of that, you can't deny that he has done a lot of amazing and great things for Marshall athletics. You just can't deny that. I mean, Marshall athletics is in a totally different place, better place now than it was when he got to Marshall in the first place back in 2009. There's no doubt about that. Back then, the athletic program was nowhere near where it is now. I mean, he's, a lot of people always say question about the hires. Some of the hires that he makes are questionable, and some of them have been. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But for the most part, look at Chris Grassi turned out well. Dan D'Antoni turned out well. I mean, Doc, for the most part, for a while he was rolling. I mean, turned out great for the most part until the last few years. And then Huff, even though that's not probably really Hamrick's doing, Huff is exciting everybody right now, and I think everybody's looking forward to seeing what he can do. So, and then just looking at the facilities, that's what he's probably most going to be remembered for, is facilities. He's totally changed the landscape and the just how it looks on campus. Everything is just crazy. It's so much better now than it ever was. They have state-of-the-art facilities. They're still trying to get that baseball stadium built. I'm sure. I mean, it's going to happen. Just don't know when. Everything with COVID or whatever. But he's done a lot of great stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that everything's been perfect, and I'm not saying that like he hasn't, shot himself in the foot a few times. But for the most part, he's done a phenomenal job, in my opinion. I mean, I would have given him at least a couple more years, but that's just me. And the board of governors and whatever said that there wasn't enough support to bring him back, which raised a lot of questions with people on social media. That was a very debated topic there. But kudos to Mike Hamrick. I mean, yeah, he's still going to be involved with Marshall to a degree, but kudos to him for every Herd fan I think should thank him for what he's done for Marshall. I mean, looking at football, some of the home and homes that he got signed. Some of the games that have been played and gotten. I mean, he's shown a lot of aggressiveness with stuff, and he's really raised Marshall's athletic profile. So you got to respect him for that. Regardless of what you think of him personally, or if you think he, didn't do a good enough job here or there in certain aspects, you got to give the man his dues, because he's been the best athletic director Marshall's had in a long time, probably. So.
Yeah. Well, look, you start at the beginning. He's an alum.
Yeah.
He played football for the Herd. So he gets it right off the bat. He gets it. And everything that he did was viewed through that lens. I'm an alum here. I've got to do the best. It's not like I just need to do a good enough job here to get recognized so I can go on to a bigger, better job. Right. That was never his MO. He always wanted to be the athletic director at Marshall. While he was here, he wanted to be here. Well, I say here, but he wanted to be there. He wanted to be at Marshall. And you talked about, he's got a long-standing track record at numerous stops, East Carolina, UNLV, whatever, of building facilities and maximizing facilities. He did a great job. Marshall's profile amongst G5 schools, or with similarly budgeted schools, let's put it that way, is pretty high. They've got a really nice looking, the Chris Klein Center is awesome. They built the Hall of Fame. It's awesome. They got Hoops Family Field put in place. Awesome. Is there always going to be some more stuff that needs done? Yeah, it's never going to be done. I mean, there needs to be a more updated version of the Cam Henderson Center. There needs to be, Marshall's football stadium is, I'm not saying it's like decrepit and old and fallen down or anything, but you're talking about a 30-year-old building now that at times has not been adequately maintained. I mean, for how many years have we, just in passing, how many years have we heard about people on social media or on message boards or whatever griping about, like, could we please change the urinals in the bathroom? How many times have we said, just tell us a day and a time and we will all show up with our pressure washers and wash the bleachers, like all that kind of stuff that's tongue in cheek. But, the place hasn't always been maintained to the highest standards. Let's be nice, but he's overseen things like the giant video boards get put in, all the stadium. I mean, just by adding those the wraps around the field, it brings the place alive. You're not looking at drab concrete. You're looking at Kelly green and lightning bolts and all that kind of stuff, and it just changes the face, especially on TV. It just looks good. To me, one of the biggest and most important things he did as athletic director. Not talking about hiring coaches, the man brought back Kelly green and white. Yeah. That is really one of the most important things to me as from a fan perspective, because it just looks so much more vibrant on television. It's so much more eye-popping when you're walking around downtown or wherever. You spot Kelly green. You just spot it. If you're in a crowd and somebody's wearing a Kelly green shirt, you're going to see that person. So he's done a great job. He made several good hires. I mean, you got to start with Chris Grassi. He's a national champion coach. You got to start there. Doc Holliday did a lot of good for Marshall. He won a lot of ball games for Marshall, brought a conference championship back to Huntington. Okay. And again, we can always curb that stuff by saying there should have been more. There should have been more. You can say that by anybody. Alabama fans think they should have more national titles under Nick Saban. So what? So what? You still won a lot of games. You got to show up at Jones C. Edwards Stadium and see an exciting brand of football more often than not. True or false?
Sellout crowds, Power 5 home games.
Right. So there were some down. It got ugly in 2016 when the wheels fell off of the football team, and you're looking at a 3-win season. You got blown out a couple of times, and blame started to get cast around. And a lot of people didn't forget about that. They kind of thought, okay, well, 4 or 5 years later, maybe we can shove that under the rug a little bit. And a lot of people just were like, no, we're not forgetting about that. Sorry. So I'm sure that stuck in the craw of a lot of people. And then this latest, we will never know the actual details surrounding the hiring of the football coach and who they wanted and who was jockeying for who and what. We'll never know that, and that's fine. But when you say things like there wasn't enough support to bring him back, well, I need you to qualify that statement. There's not enough support from who? Are you talking about the fan base? Are you talking about the board of governors? Are you talking about the really handful of deep-pocketed boosters? I mean, qualify that statement for me, because I'm sure there are a lot of fans, a lot of athletes that would have loved to have seen Mike Hamrick come back.
Yeah.
And of course, there are a lot of fans that don't mind that he's not coming back. So there are those grass is greener folks. There are those, well, we got a good thing. We're okay with where we're at. Let's see where it goes kind of thing. But there's no denying Mike Hamrick left Marshall Athletics in a better place than he found it. Period. Yeah. And as an athletic director, as a person walking the earth, that's what you want to do. You want to leave it better than you found it. And he most certainly did that. High profile games, conference championships in multiple sports, a national championship, multiple school records broken, some of the greatest players to ever play at Marshall University across multiple sports have come through Huntington, West Virginia during the tenure of Mike Hamrick.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, recognize that as a fan and be a little bit of appreciative. Don't be mad that he said something mean to you one time 5 years ago. Be like, wow, he put in place coaches that were able to get guys like John Elmore here. He put in place coaches that were able to get guys like Rakeem Cato here.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to benefit from that. We got to see that for years. We got to see all this great talent and all these great games. I mean, you've got fond memories of certain games that will be with you forever.
Purdue.
They will be with you forever.
Period.
And
Purdue.
if a lesser athletic director is at the helm, maybe you don't negotiate that home and home. Maybe it's a one and done and you don't get that game. And that doesn't happen in Huntington. So can you always do better? Yes. And we can't sit here and talk about, championships and the athletic department without immediately looking at Western Kentucky. And that's what a lot of folks are going to do. They're going to look at Western Kentucky. They've got 5 times or 4 times as many conference championships as Marshall does. And since 2014. So Marshall's been in the Conference USA since 5. And so we're talking about since 2014, Western Kentucky's got like 24 conference championships and Marshall's got like 6. But they've got 1 national title and Western's got none. I digress, but I'm still saying, so people will say, see, it can be done. You can dominate as an athletic program. And we've talked before, like, well, maybe they just heavily invest in football because they know that's what the fans really want. And as long as they're good in football, then they can get away with being less competitive in other sports. And that's probably true to a little bit of an extent. But when you look across the landscape and you see Marshall dead last in conference championships since 2014, that's got to change. It's got to change. At some point, you can't be last, right? You don't have to be first. It would be great if you were first, but you can't be last. You can't have fewer conference championships than UTEP. Okay, across an athletic department. You can't have fewer than, UTSA and these young fledgling kind of athletic departments. So I don't know what it all comes back to, but it does come back to the fact that Marshall's in the market for an athletic director. And they better make a good hire because the guy's going to have a lot of pieces in place to succeed. And there will be no room for excuses if things derail. They got a lot of momentum going forward. You got to build on that. So what do you do? Where do you look? I know nothing about hiring an athletic director.
No.
what do you do? What do you look for? Do you look for a guy who's fan friendly and raises money, or do you look for a guy that can knock it out of the park on hire after hire and isn't really good with the fans? I mean, what would you want? And given what you know about Marshall and the city they're in and the relationship they like to have with their fans, what do you think is most important when you bringing in a guy like an athletic director?
Well, I think the thing they have, and I tweeted this too, I think the thing that the new athletic director has to have, like from day one, is aggressiveness. You got to have that, because the administration before Hamrick, that there was no aggressiveness there whatsoever. They lost so many opportunities for Marshall just because of just sitting on their hands.
I hate to interrupt you there, but we're talking about an administration that had a Hollywood feature film created during their tenure and did not capitalize on it.
And they still blew it.
Yeah.
Let Tennessee get out of a 2-for-1. Let Miami get out of a 2-for-1. Just stupid stuff. Like, there's no excuse in the world that those games shouldn't happen and stuff like that. I mean, so, in that regard, you can't. I mean, Mike Hamrick he was aggressive. He didn't settle for just, we'll just take whatever you give us. No, we want something out of this, and we're gonna demand and we get this out of it. We want this home and home. We want this, 2-for-1 with whoever. They wanted this stuff. Like that has to continue. You can't, especially in 2021 college athletics. Group of 5 programs are starting to separate more and more from the Power 5. You have to stay aggressive. You can't let up. You can't give them an inch. I mean, you have to remain, not in control, but you have to remain, the aggressor. And I think that's the biggest thing that they need to worry about, whether it's a guy that's 70 years old or a guy that's 35 years old. You have to remain aggressive and, try to not copy what Mike Hamrick did, but build on what Mike Hamrick did. But me personally, everybody loved the hire of Charles Huff for a multitude of reasons, but one is his energy and his, youthfulness, I guess you could call it. He's a younger guy, energetic.
He's hungry. He's hungry. He wants to prove himself.
Hungry. I think they need somebody that's hungry. I think they need somebody that's, younger-ish. Like I said, the age doesn't really matter as much as the way that they carry themselves and the way that they run the show. But a younger guy that could, re-energize the whole fan base would be good. So something like that, they need to, beyond anything else, no matter how, like I said, the age, all that aside, you got to be aggressive. Aggressiveness and hungry, and being hungry, like you said, the 2 most important things in this new hire.
Yeah. To me, you have to be aware of where you are. A lot of college towns don't have the relationship with their university like Marshall and Huntington have. So you have to know your people.
Right.
You have to know what you're stepping into. These people hold their program, their university as a whole. They hold it really dear, and they expect whoever steps into that seat to be an unbelievably protective steward of that university and of that institution.
It's different, Marshall.
It is. First, and they want somebody that they can walk up to in the hallways, not the hallway, I guess it's a hallway, at the Cam Henderson Center, and just say, "Hey, Trace, how's it going?"
Yep.
They want that. They don't want to sit there and give you their, here's what we ought to do. But they want to be able to go, "Hey, Trace, how's it going?" And they want you to be able to go, "Hey, KD, good to see you back at the game." They want to be able to interact with you just like you're some regular dude that lives in Huntington, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what you are. You're some regular dude that lives in Huntington. You just happen to be charged with running Marshall athletics.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're going to have somebody that's aggressive, that's somebody that knows how to schedule, knows how to get what they want. Todd Stewart at Western does a phenomenal job of stuff like that, because he'll couple in a home and home football series with a home and home basketball series. And you get across multiple sports, and it really helps get you what you need. Or, he's just really good at that. He's a really good athletic director. I don't know what tree you go climbing to find the guy you want. Do you go try to find some associate athletic director from like Clemson, or is there somebody that Charles Huff has familiarity with at Alabama who thinks is a rising star? Do you even go that route? Do you even, do you have to include your highest profile head coaches in this decision. They have to work with this guy day in and day out. They have to be on the same page. Yeah. So you have to think that, D'Antoni and Huff, and definitely Chris Grassi now, which is wild to think the soccer coaches, but it is. They have to have a say in who their boss is. They have to have a like-minded vision. And as far as Mike Hamrick moving into a role in the president's office, I don't know what that means, but my gut tells me it's a way to keep him around and keep him active and keep him working on the project to get a baseball stadium built.
Yep. That's
his legacy. That's what his legacy was going to be. He wanted to be the guy that got the baseball stadium finally built in Huntington. And I feel like that's what this is. Even if he goes in there and that's his only project, which would be great if everything else was off of his plate and he could focus solely on getting that done and tying in that downtown area and making it a nice cohesive unit that wraps from 3rd to 5th Avenue and all the way down to the Hoops Family Field and all the way up to Joan C. Edwards Stadium. That would be a really cool little section of town.
Yeah.
If it was filled with some a few restaurants and some bars and places you could walk to and all that kind of stuff, and you could reach all of Marshall's main fields in a couple of block radius. Think about that. The Cam, the Joan, the Dots right there. You'd have a new baseball stadium somewhere around there, and Hoops Family Field right down a couple of more blocks. That would be an amazing part of Huntington. So I'm not saying I hope that's what it is, but I hope that's part of what it is. I hope he gets to put a lot more focus on getting this baseball project done, working with the city and seeing what they can come up with, and perhaps the state, and, revitalizing that downtown area a little bit. That would be really, really cool. Is that what you think this is kind of all about too? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I even read something that said he'd be I don't know if it was like a confirmed thing or not, but definitely working toward at the baseball stadium more. I mean, that was such a huge thing. And I mean, obviously COVID put a big snag in that and everything. Marshall owns that property there. It's just a matter of, getting it done. But it's going to get done. It's just, it was supposed to already, I think, be done this year. But because of COVID, and other mitigating things, it's just been put off longer. But if they can get that done whenever they get that done, job well done. Job well done.
Well, look, I don't want to throw any gasoline on the fire here, but I want to tell you something that you're probably already aware of, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. I live in Florida, right? Mm-hmm. We dealt with coronavirus and the pandemic just like everybody else did. Home building, business building, and all these other projects didn't skip a beat down here. They have built thousands of homes just in my neighborhood, just in my county. They have built countless new gas stations and strip malls and, medical offices in downtown Tampa. They haven't stopped building freaking buildings. So to just go, I don't want people to just go, well, everything got put on hold. Well, it might have, but also if you want it to get done, it'll get done.
Right.
I mean, don't just take that and be like, oh, well, I guess we're done for a couple of years. No, you can't allow that to be an excuse because it hasn't stopped the wheels of commerce where I'm at.
And it goes back to that aggressiveness. I mean, Mike Hamrick's not going to let that go. He's going to make sure that gets done.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm saying is I don't want the casual fan to just think, great, this all got derailed, and now how long is it going to be before it gets to ramp back up? It shouldn't have completely derailed, is what I'm telling you. If it did, it shouldn't have, because it hasn't stopped at least in my area of the country. So as far as I know, cash still spins in West Virginia the way it does in Florida. So if you've got money, somebody's damn sure happy to take it and run an inloader, or you know what I mean, or draw up some blueprints or whatever services, whatever stage you're at. Somebody's damn happy to take your money and perform that service, I'm sure. Yeah. Especially in the middle of a pandemic when they want some money. So let's do some final thoughts here, and then we'll get out of here for this episode. Lots of news. We'll see how a lot of it unfolds. But what do you got for me as we close out season 6, episode 3?
Oh, just a big congrats again to the soccer team. Just historic stuff. I mean, best team in Marshall athletics history. I don't really care what anybody says. How are you going to argue with that?
Yep.
You could easily make the argument Chris Grassi's the best coach in Marshall athletics history. You could argue that, and you could make a case. You know what I mean? I mean, he's at least, if you don't want to call him the best coach in Marshall athletics history, he's the most accomplished.
Put him on the Mount Rushmore. We can put him on the Mount Rushmore.
Put him on the Mount Rushmore, absolutely. So just awesome stuff there. And then thanks again, big thanks got to go out to Mike Hamrick for all the stuff he did for Marshall as the athletic director. It's not going to be forgotten. I mean, the stuff's it's going to live on. I mean, all the facilities, all the stuff, like that doesn't just go away. Yeah. If they can finish this baseball stadium, then that's going to make it even better. Just awesome stuff. And we were talking about the crowds that Marshall was getting in the College Cup and everything. And man, that national title game, they said there was like 5,000 tickets they could sell. And I think that I read in the paper that Hamrick actually said that they estimated 3,500 to 4,000 of those 5,000 fans were Marshall fans.
Oh, you meant 5,000 total. I thought you meant 5,000, like an allotment of 5,000 for Marshall.
No, total.
Wow.
So Marshall probably had 75, 80% of that crowd. I mean, it was crazy. And another little side note, I saw they actually are starting to now come out with the college football preview magazines and so forth.
Right.
And I saw last night at Walmart briefly that Lindy's, theirs is out now, and they have Marshall picked number 1 in the East. So just want to leave it out. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Just saying. Well, I know that there was a little bit of eyebrows that got raised. We all are, I don't know if all of us do, but a lot of us have probably been following that one Twitter account that keeps putting out these rankings, like the top whatever, some Sooner account. Yeah. And he ranked, newly transferring in quarterback Bailey Zappa of Western Kentucky, the number 1 quarterback in Conference USA, and Grant Wells number 2. And I know that a lot of people are just hated that. But I want you to know this. I think Steven and I talked about it. Western Kentucky is absolutely a team that can sneak up and beat you. We'll see how it all plays out. But look, that guy's good. Bailey Zappa is good. And he's got his offensive coordinator with him as well. I'm not saying, we all know that Grant Wells is really good too. He just is. The last 3 games of his season last year are hopefully a big anomaly. And we can go from the first 2/3 to 3/4 of the season of more accurately what his career is going to be like. So this is going to be fun to see how these guys match up against one another. Interesting to see that the Herd is number 1 preseason in the East. I don't know that. Did you glance to see who was number 2?
FAU.
I figured that's who it was going to be. But yeah, a lot of excitement around the football team. Should be. It's a whole new everything. And at the end of the month, it's really going to be a whole new everything. Yeah. Mike Hamrick was the string that tied it all together, and now he's going to be stepping down as athletic director. And like I said, Jeff O'Malley's going to be taking over on an interim basis. I'm sure that's mainly just to be handling day-to-day operations. They're not going to be making any big splash hires or signing off on any huge projects in the interim. Though that'll definitely be the job of whoever gets the job on a full-time basis. But I'm interested to see how this search goes. I'm interested to see where they go. Do they go to a, like a really, really successful athletic director from an FCS or Division II or Division III school, or do they, try to get somebody who's an associate athletic director at a larger, big budgeted school? So much like the football coaching hire, were they going to go with a, up-and-comer head coach from a lower division, or an assistant on a big program, and they win assistant on a big program? Let's see if they do that again with athletic director. So good episode. Lots of fun. Great to be behind the mic again. Be looking forward to when the Feel Still books ship, and we can start doing some position group breakdowns and talking about roster changes and all that good stuff. But as news breaks, we're going to keep talking about it. So keep your ear to the trail, Trace, and see what we can find out with this athletic director situation. But you take us out of here, and we'll get it out. We'll get going.
Go Herds.
Go Tops. We'll see you next time. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.